Finally for this episode we have Wizardfire, another Data East game re-released under the Johnny Turbo's arcade line. I was just desperately looking on the eShop for a quick game after the days I spent recording GoldenEye and thought, yeah, why not? One thing to bring up is that this game is a sequel. I did not know that when I downloaded this. The games were called Dark Seal and Dark Seal 2 in Japan, but overseas they were renamed Gate of Doom and Wizardfire. Had I known that at the time, I would have probably gone for Gate of Doom first, but I only found out after I played this game. So the game is set in the Empire of Gaul when in the year 355 AD, 4 heroes showed up and defeated some evil army, but now they're back. There's these two shadowy evil guys talking about raising an undead army by killing 101 innocent people and unlocking the Dragon Shrine. Then we get the wisdom of the sage about how when evil guys show up, the Shining Knights of the Wizardfire will show up and kick all their heads in. So let's start the game. There are 5 playable characters, meaning I'll be playing the game 5 times. Like with Final Fight, I'll alternate footage of characters between levels. Lucky for me, the game has exactly 5 levels so I can focus on them all equally. We get our heroes overlooking the destruction and blaming this guy Volov, who I assume is the villain of Gate of Doom. Also, this game has voice acting, and for English voice acting in a 1992 Japanese arcade game, it's not as bad as you'd expect. There's a likeable cheese to it.
Welcome to the area. I have rumored that Volov might still be nearby. I'm here!
So Volov announces his presence and we begin our first stage, a village with me playing as the knight, Karl F. Greystone. I'm also accompanied by my long-suffering player 2 as the elf in this playthrough. Karl flies with a big morning star that'll swing forward and then in a circle. As you can see, the standard undead enemy types like skeletons and even stuff like mushrooms and jellyfish are around, and there's chests to destroy for point-giving treasure. After just a little bit we reach the other side of the village and cross a drawbridge to fight our first boss, the dragon Volov is riding. It breathes fire and flies around. Player 2 is turned into a chest for a bit when the magic bar fills. One thing about Karl's gameplay is that he can actually charge his attack by not attacking for a few seconds. Half the cast has that, the other half charges by button mashing. Karl's alright. We take down the dragon and Volov escapes. Gotta say, the stage clear jingle is incredibly awful. We announce our intent to follow him and continue to stage 2. We leave the castle and into the rest of the village. Here I'm playing as Freya Ederne, the wizard. Her main attack is called the Blue Pillar Flame. Hers is also charged by not attacking. Her magic bar fills and she turns into a fire that spits fireballs. Another spell I get to fill in the meter is turning into a cloud shooting lightning at everything. At the end of this bridge I meet this wizard and his 2 slime friends. His health bar is puny though and he doesn't take that long to take down. Freya's also fun enough to play as. I break open the sense behind him and move on into the mist swamp. You may have noticed Freya speeding up with after images and the like. You can see the boots and armour above a life bar. These are upgrades that can be found throughout the levels. You're also given some automatically after returning from death. I cross the bridge taking on insects and tumbleweeds and getting the confusion status which messes with my controls. I also get a rain spell from my magic bar which creates a circle of water that spreads out. At the end I meet up with the wizard again who turns into this massive tree spitting explosive seeds at me. There's also the fly traps by the roots spitting enemies at me that don't last long. Once its health is gone, which doesn't take long, it bursts into flames and I move to the next level, where we get one of my favourite lines. Yeah, you fucking water, I'll cave your skull in. Stage 3 is the Wall Mountain Range, and I'm now playing as Hark Ryger, the bard. He fights with a spear and isn't very fun. The spear I just found too hard to hit enemies with. He does turn into a unicorn shooting out projections of itself when his magic's full for some reason. He's one whose attack is charged from mashing, he'll do a rapid thrust. There's a lot of zombies, a fire wall and some faces firing arrows from the walls. I just walk into the fire and use my post-damage invisibility to get through and collect the treasure behind it. I go along the bottom at the fork with the rain spell taking most things out. Down here there's just a crushing wall and behind it some treasure. Going up at the fork I get ambushed by precursors of the Kako demon from Doom. After that I go down these stairs to face the mini-boss which transforms into a copy of yourself. It takes a few hits, teleports behind me and takes some more hits until it dies. I then go deeper. Right away in the next area I get a wind spell that turns me into a tornado so I can just make contact with enemies to damage them. Rather than going across these moving platforms I break open this wall and take the upper route where all the treasure is. There's spears coming out of the walls but I don't really care. I also get turned into a pig for a few seconds. When I make it to the end of this room I end up in a fight with the skeleton of Volov's dragon. It breathes blue fire and throws a pair of fireballs from its hands. After losing a third of its health it falls apart and each part tries chasing me down before reassembling. That's pretty much it for the moveset and I take it down. The party sees the enemy's castle floating in the sky. Freya says there's an icon in the cave of Akbal that can transport them up. So for stage 4, the Canaan Desert, I'm playing as the elf, Edmina Josestar. She and the next character are new for this game, with Gate of Doom having a ninja who wasn't brought back for this one. Like Hark, she has a rapid attack by button mashing, but her swings also send out magic waves to add more range. I found them more fun than Hark anyway. I've got to find 2 stone tablets in this desert. The first one I find just walking to the left. After walking so far in one direction I get lost in a sandstorm and dropped off elsewhere in the desert. After a couple more sandstorms I find the second tablet and a compass appears on screen to point me to the cave. It's not very far away. I take out the oblivious guards and make the entrance to the cave appear. Inside, another wizard appears and activates these 2 gargoyles. All 3 are damaged by me attacking this orb in front of the wizard. Once they're dealt with, I enter the next room filled with mummies. While exploring one of the upper rooms, I get to use this boulder spell, which just turns me into a jumping boulder. Landing damages every enemy on screen. In the room next to it, I get this Medusa spell, which lets me shoot petrifying eye lasers. It can also blow up walls. At the end of the room, I enter this arena, where 2 wizards enter the bodies of these golems. Only attacks to the head can damage them, and as you can see, they have one of these final fight boss life bars that starts a different colour and doesn't show any indication of lowering health for a while. The golems themselves have flamethrower hands, can punch and cause an earthquake by hitting the ground. There's also this weird homing bullet spit thing. That's about it, and to be honest, this is just a sort of slow, boring, repetitive fight. They take ages to finally die. Everyone then teleports up to the final stage, the castle. For this last level I'm showing my playthrough of the dwarf and the other new character for this game, Jade Greataxe. The guy can throw up to 2 axes at once like boomerangs. While finding these Amina palette swaps, I get a spell that transforms me into a golem myself. I move slow but my punches make people explode. Jade can also charge up by not attacking for a second. He's okay, still better than Hark. To be honest, none of the characters are amazingly fun or anything, especially at this point in the game where they're just overloading the screen with enemies to take more of your money in the arcade. I enter the castle itself and meet Volov. He welcomes us and sets Zolas, a giant spider with a woman's head, on me. She tries ramming into me, shooting webs and birthing smaller spiders. After a while she splits in 2 and uses the iconic spider ability, shooting lightning from their eyes. I also get poisoned on contact with them, but I have a limit to continue, so whatever. Once she's dead, I enter this room with a staircase I have to climb while the dragon shoots landing at me. I fail to cross the moving platforms and just use my post-revival invincibility to walk over the gap. After that is a door leading to Volov and this night. He refers to me as having met his partner before, so maybe this isn't Volov but some new evil wizard man? I don't know, and the game isn't very clear on it at all. Volov has a barrier and summons little meteors down from the sky. A few axes thrown at him destroys the barrier and gives the chance to damage him. While this is going on, he's also throwing various projectiles and other enemies are still showing up. Sometimes when I get close to Volov, he'll have spikes shoot out from himself. Also, this whole time I'm chucking axes in his face, that knight is just standing back doing nothing. To be honest, this fight is a little tedious like the golems, just nowhere near as long. While it's in my mind, I assume that portal in the back is the Gate of Doom that the first game was named after. A few tedious minutes later, I turn into a golem myself and punch the last lot of health out of him. The rest of the party shows up and Freya starts casting a spell. Everyone is teleported out of the castle as it starts crumbling.
Looks like this is goodbye.
I hope we work together again.
I think we will.
Yes.
Just send word if anyone needs a hand.
Good luck, my friend. And good luck to all of you, too.
And that's it, the party splits up while Hark and Amina go off together. Wizard Fire is okay. It's only half an hour long, but even then it still drags in points, namely those 2 boss battles. But 4 out of its 5 characters I enjoyed enough, and most of the levels were fine. But it's not a game I'd see myself really wanting to play again. If you see enough of the cheap, I'd say give it a try. It's an alright half an hour, but even doing 5 playthroughs it wasn't really worth the £7.10 I paid for it though. After my longest video yet, it's time for something much shorter with Gate of Doom. This is the first Darkseal game, the second being Wizardfire, which I played back in episode 6, not knowing it was a sequel. In the Kingdom of Etruria, people have been corrupted enough by wickedness that the Gate of Doom spews out an army of demons to conquer them. But it's alright because 4 heroes are summoned by the Force Divine to deal with all that and shut the Gate of Doom. 3 of those heroes I recognise from the sequel. After choosing a character, I get the king wishing me luck. I start with Freya Edurne, the wizard for the first level, a tomb. The gameplay isn't that much different than its sequel. I have just one attack, but a bar that fails to give me a different magic attack based on what page the spellbook is on when the bar is filled. Freya's attack is a fire spell that travels a good distance. The first spell I get transforms me into a Medusa that fires petrifying eye lasers. So despite this game being shorter than the first game overall, it tends to feel much slower. I found myself utterly surrounded by enemies that took longer to kill more often. One detail that I missed completely until I did the music ranking is that the music for this level would be arranged for the ending theme in the sequel. Considering the gap between recording the 2 games is over a year and a half, and it's 13 months right now since I made the video on that game, it's no wonder I didn't remember. Eventually I break open a door and move on to the next screen. A lot of harpies and treasure chests to break open for items that award points. I also get confused, which just messes with my controls for a bit. The next spell transforms me into a plant that fires off damaging spores everywhere. Once all the enemies are dead, I can break open the door and move on to the first boss. I get taunted by the evil Lord Volov and get a dragon set on me. The dragon mostly flies around trying to crash into me, but it will also stop and breathe lightning at times. Compared to the sequel, the bosses take forever in this game. This one isn't so bad, but later ones drag things out way too long. Eventually the dragon's head explodes off and I finish the level, but first I see Volov petrify a woman before a demon carries her off. Thankfully the level clear jingle is nowhere near as migraine inducing as the one in the sequel. The king congratulates me but doesn't talk about the kidnapped woman and then sends me off to destroy a monster in the Misty Mountain. For level 2 I'll show my playthrough as Karl F. Greystone, the Morningstar wielding knight who also returned in Wizardfire. Only a few enemy kills in, I get the spell that transforms me into a giant boulder and lets me just run the enemy over for a little bit. Icy water still damages me though. There's an optional side path where I also have to avoid falling boulders, but all it leads to is some more points. I do get the spell that transforms me into a wall of light that fires off many homing lasers though. I enter a cave that puts me into a fight with a mini-boss, a blue ice-breathing dragon. Right away I get the tornado spell that lets me just stand inside it and keep damaging it. Despite how long it lasts, boss health takes so long to drain that it doesn't even take half of its health. During this it's also jumping around to make boulders fall on me from above. Once the spell runs out it's a lot of attack spamming while begging it to die faster. Once it's dead I can break open the next door. On these stairs I get the water spell that allows me to keep moving forward with many small whirlpools surrounding me. This couldn't have come at a better time because it lets me just charge past all these skeletons that take forever to die. It gets me right to the door leading to the boss. It's a giant blob with a mouth on top, a single eye and 2 tentacles with claws on the ends that also have teeth. It's also spitting fireballs all over the place. Thankfully this guy dies a lot quicker than the dragon. The king then tells me that his daughter Amelia went on a journey and that he's worried for her safety. For level 3 in the mountain tops, I'll swap over to Trident wielder Ryger Hawk, also returning in Wizardfire. After crossing the first bridge I get the lightning spell. I transform into a storm cloud and can fire bolts of lightning in a straight line. Did you know a storm cloud can be killed by dropping a boulder on it so it falls off a cliff? When I reach the second bridge, I realise with Ryger there's no point trying to kill everything if I don't have to, so I just keep running forward. He can only attack in a straight line and this is where gangs of enemies become a huge pain to deal with. I run across the third bridge and break through the door to the next screen. At the first bridge there's a dragon snake thing flying around and spitting fireballs. It can only be damage on the head but it doesn't take too long to kill. Only other thing to do is break open the door to the next screen. Here I get the spell that turns me into an open flame spurting fireballs around. Once again I don't bother trying to kill everything and barge my way to the next screen. Volov is here saying his demon has already captured 5 victims. First time hearing of this, thanks for cluing me into your plan. He takes Amelia and her 2 companions, leaving me to fight what looks like a huge orange Kako demon with stubby arms. While it fires lasers at me and has some more tinier eyeballs flying around at me, I just keep hitting its arms. Once its arms fall off, it fills the screen with lightning and then dies, clearing the stage. The king sends me off to the volcano Delos to find the Gem of Shorn and Crown of Mentius before Volov. For this level I'll show my playthrough as Kirikaze, the last of the 4 heroes and the one who was absent from the sequel with no explanation. Playing as him, I realised why. He isn't fun. He attacks by throwing 3 shuriken, but they aren't very damaging. Definitely the least fun character to play as. You can also see I'm desperately rushing for the end of the stage. This was my 4th playthrough. I didn't enjoy the game much on my first, let alone 4th. At this point I just want it to be done. On the second screen I fight a Cerberus that dashes along the screen while either breathing or surrounding itself in a barrier of fire. It teases me too. When low on health it turns blue for a while and becomes completely invincible. Once it's dead, I move on to the next screen. I get another very convenient water spell but die seconds later and lose it. Once again I ignore enemies and rush to the boss. The fourth boss is another dragon with some very strange proportions. He just shimmies left and right, breathing fire and swatting with his one arm that doesn't even reach past his neck. He was actually quicker than the Cerberus to kill. Moving on, Volov petrifies me and takes the crown, but the gem repels him so he leaves. That ends the level. The king simply tells me to go get the crown back. Back to Freya for the final level. Luckily I get the boulder spell right at the beginning, so I can just barge my way through all of enemies and break through the door to Volov. He says he won't surrender until Lucifer is revived, which he says is soon. Volov transforms himself into a giant wizard and fills the screen with skeletons and flying demons. He can fire out flaming heads and transform me into a pig that can't attack. The only way to damage him is to attack the huge jewel on his chest when he unfolds his arms to attack. It takes fucking forever. About a quarter of this game's playtime is spent on the 2-stage final boss. It's just awful. And once I've finally drained his health, I get to deal with stage 2. I pick up the crown and move on to the next room where Volov is waiting with 4 palette swaps of himself that die quickly. This takes even longer. Volov will teleport around the screen and attack with a spin attack that leaves him invincible and goes on forever. He can also fire lightning from his sword. That's about it, and a few minutes later... Amelia and the other victims are freed and we get to use the 2 treasures to close the Gate of Doom. I get a single screen saying what I just said, and then the credits. If you remember, I thought Wizard Fire was just okay and pretty forgettable. Gate of Doom on the other hand, I just didn't like. It's only half an hour long, but it's a really dull, repetitive half hour. This is the first actual series I fully completed for the show though. Granted it's only 2 short arcade games, but I have to start somewhere. I'd reflect on the series, but there isn't much to say. A not very good game got an okay sequel and that was it. It does mean that next Monday we'll get the first music ranking that covers a series rather than just one game, so there's that to look forward to.